Good afternoon. Today, the Commander-in-Chief of Russian Forces Grouping in the Syrian Arab Republic, Colonel General Sergei Sorokikin, is participating in briefing. The Russian Federation continues to provide help in the Syrian population in fighting ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra terrorist groupings and taking steps for resolution of the conflict. Thus, the main efforts are focused on ensuring the cessation of hostilities in Syria. Thanks to the purposeful activity of the Russian Center for Reconciliation of Opposing Sides, today 1,571 agreements on ceasefire have been signed, the representatives of the inhabited areas. Moreover, the number of armed formations which has claimed to observe the ceasefire regime is 219. The situation has dramatically improved after signing of the memorandum on the establishment of de-escalation zones in the Syrian Arab Republic on May 4th in Astana. The civil war in Syria has actually stopped. In addition, the establishment of the memorandum allowed to begin work on rebuilding war-torn inhabited areas. Civilians began to return to liberated cities and towns. Households of ordinary citizens, power supply facilities, transportation hubs and roads are restored. Channels for irrigation of agricultural land are filling with water. Schools are being repaired in order to maximize number of children who could continue the learning process. Humanitarian access to the inhabited areas located in zones of de-escalation has been renewed. During the last month, 14 humanitarian convoys have been sent by the international organizations, which greatly improved the situation of the population. After the opening of the humanitarian corridor to Al-Wahhabi, organized with the participation of the Russian Center for Reconciliation of Opposing Sides, humanitarian assistance from UN and International Committee of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies in Eastern Ghouta have started. It is possible to reduce the price of basic foodstuffs in the suburb of Damascus for 30 to 60%. Russian Center for Reconciliation of Opposing Sides conducted 169 humanitarian in which the population received 17 tons of food. Over 10,500 Syrians received medical treatment. Humanitarian demining in the areas liberated from the militants is provided. June 2nd, at the Russian branch of the International Anti-Mine Center in Aleppo, was held another graduation of students. 92 Syrian sappers were sent to demine the city of Maskana and other inhabited areas in the eastern parts of the province of Aleppo and Homs, recently liberated from the jihadists. In accordance with the memorandum, the Joint Working Group on De-escalation has been formed and which is actively functioning. 3 meetings have been held. The map shows areas of de-escalation and the security zones have been developed. The draft guidelines of the Joint Working Group has been prepared. At the 5th International Meeting on Syria in the framework of the Astana format, it is expected to approve the main documents regulating the border and the procedures, over observation of the cessation of hostilities in the areas, in order to avoid losses among the civilian population. The operation of the withdrawal of militants and their families from the suburbs of Damascus and Homs was carried out, held with the participation of servicemen of the Russian Center for Reconciliation of Opposing Sides. Within the operation, 1,853 militants and 5,012 members of their families has been exported from the suburbs of the Syrian capital Bursa and Kabern in the province of Ilbidin. Currently, engineers are working in these inhabited areas, checking the buildings on the presence of explosive devices left by militants. Restoration of vital infrastructure and social infrastructure is held. Citizens of these areas return to civilian life. Two-month operation for withdrawing members of legal armed groups from Al-Baer in the suburb of Homs is finished. According to the agreements reached in the inhabited areas, Jarablus in the province of Aleppo and in the city of Idlib, 19,653 people, including 6,964 militants, have been exported. After the withdrawal of the militants in Al-Wap, about 8,000 civilians have returned back. In addition, in the northern part of the province of Damascus, in the cities of Zabadani, Media, and Buchan, 2,600 former military militants have settled their status, taking advantage of the amnesty ordinance. The success of the political settlement of the Syrian conflict, including the creation of 4 zones of de-escalation, reducing the number of violations of the ceasefire regime, allowing the group of troops in the Syrian Arab Republic to focus on elimination of ISIS forces in the eastern part of the country. With the support of Russian aerospace forces, major successes have been achieved in almost all areas. I want to note that the government forces, with the support of the Russian aerospace forces, are not fighting against the Syrian opposition. They are consistently reaching the main target, destruction of ISIS, Jabhat al-Nusra, and their affiliated terrorist groups. At the same time, we do not see significant results of the fight against ISIS by coalition led by the United States. Declaring the purpose of the fight against international terrorism, the coalition strikes on Syrian troops, freely produces ISIS militants from areas of the encirclement, strengthening terrorist groups in the areas of Palmyra and Deir ez-Zor. I want to ask why they are doing this and what real purpose do they serve. Now we see that the coalition's actions only prevent the elimination of groups of ISIS by government forces. We expect that our coalition partners would take measures to prevent such incidents and will be engaged in the fight against terrorist groups ISIS in Syria. About the results of the operations for the liberation of territory of the Syrian Arab Republic conducted by government forces will report Colonel General Surovikin. Hello. In last month, government troops and militia units are developing success in the northeastern province of Aleppo, Palmyra, and the eastern Qalamon in the south of Syria. They are moving along the Syrian-Jordan border and border with Iraq. As a result, a large group of ISIS was defeated while the enemy suffered significant losses in manpower and hardware. During the month, 109 inhabited areas, 3,922 square kilometers of territory have been liberated from the militants. During this time, the Russian Aerospace Force aircraft performed 1,268 sorties and destroyed 3,200 terrorist targets, including command posts, weapon depots, and ammunition supply bases and training camps of militants. Aleppo province, the offensive along the western bank of the Euphrates River. Units of the armed forces and militia units knocked the ISIL militants out of the main cities such as Makana, Ratman, and Shasha, and approached the city of Al-Tabaka. A control over the Giro strategic important airport was taken. The attack rate of the government forces increased to 8 kilometers per day. In a total, 83 settlements and more than 500 square kilometers of territory have been liberated from terrorists. 3,000 ISIS militants, including a few dozen of commanders, as well as more than 20 tanks, 7 infantry fighting vehicles, and 9 artillery guns of large caliber have been destroyed. The command staff of the Russian force grouping in the Syrian Arab Republic closely monitor the situation in the area of Raqqa, where we have seen how the militants freely leave the city and its suburbs. According to reports, in early June, ISIS terrorists, in agreement with the command of the Kurdish troops, members of the Union of the Democratic Forces, left the inhabited areas of Al-Tada and Al-Hammam without resistance, located 19 kilometers southwest of Raqqa, and moved in the direction of Palmyra. Instead of eliminating terrorists responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrian civilians, the coalition led by the United States, along with the controlled Union of Democratic Forces, concluded with the leaders of ISIS, who without a fight live occupied, inhabited, and moved to those provinces where the Syrian government forces are operating. It seems that the American party uses the ISIS to prevent the government troops from advancement under the cover of fighting against terrorism. At the same time, certain Western media agencies misinform the world community, talking about harsh combat actions with the ISIS insurgents in the Raqqa province. All the attempts of the ISIS terrorists to pass through the corridor located in the south of Raqqa are timely detected and suppressed by the reconnaissance means of the Russian command in Syria. On May 25th, the aircraft of the Russian aerospace forces eliminated a terrorist column heading towards Palmyra. At night on May 29th to the 30th, another attempt of ISIS insurgents column to leave Raqqa was stopped. As a result, 80 terrorists, 36 vehicles, 8 fuel tanker trucks, and 17 pickup trucks with heavy armament were eliminated. One minor ISIS group managed to escape and hide in well-prepared transshipment bases and caves in the Hama and Homs provinces, discovered by reconnaissance means. They were engaged on May 30th by the Admiral Essence frigate and the Casanador submarine from the eastern part of the Mediterranean by means of Caliber cruise missiles. According to the objective monitoring data, all of the assigned targets were hit. Near Palmyra, the government troops and militia detachments successfully conducted offensive actions against ISIS groups in the northwest, east, and southeast directions, pushing them out of commanding heights and expanding the security zones around the strategic highway Damascus-Palmyra and the Tifor airfield. In the course of the combat, terrorists were dislodged from the gas field share that caused serious damage to their economic potential, depriving them from income through illegal hydrocarbon extraction. The Syrian army has taken hold of 3 cities and 66 important heights near Palmyra. The government troops have approached the Arak town, the capture of which will create conditions for further offensives toward Eskuke and Deir ez-Zor. The situation to the southeast of Palmyra has been considerably improved. The government troops have defeated the large ISIS groups to the southwest of al-Syria. 3,200 square kilometers of territory, as well as 20 inhabited areas, including Makase, al-Basiri, and al-Barda, have been liberated from terrorists. The phosphate fields have been put under control. The offensive towards Abu Kamal is developing successfully. The advancement constitutes 184 kilometers. The government troops have mopped up the al-Buda town and reached the Syrian-Iraqi border, which is 40 kilometers to the south. In cooperation with Russian Center for Reconciliation, the opposing sides, the detachments of the Free Syrian Army acting to the northeast of Demira town, are conducting ceasefire negotiations with the authorities. The positions of the government troops in the southern part of Es-Suwaida province have been improved. The Syrian armed forces have managed to capture a number of strategic heights and communications in this region, depriving terrorists from free transportation of reserves and cargoes in the south of the country. However, in the course of the offensive, the government troops faced resistance of the aviation in the international U.S.-led coalition. The American party has put forward a groundless ultimatum not to approach the positions of the so-called new Syrian army. They say that the government troops constitute a threat to the American bases and camps used for training of opposition combatants in the south of Syria. As a result, the coalition aviation and combatants checkpoints of the new Syrian army have blocked the way for government troops, which are defeating the ISIS groupings and carrying out control of using frontier outposts along the border with Iraq to the northeast of the Al-Tanf and Abu Kamal. This is the breach of the sovereign right of the Syrian Arab Republic to defend its borders. The representatives of the U.S. military command explained that government troops constituted danger for them. There is no explanation what kind of danger is meant and where its source is. It looks like not the ISIS terrorists, but the government troops are dangerous for the coalition. Meanwhile, the Russian command in Syria takes every effort for reconciliation of the opposing sides and providing security for the Syrian military groupings. Despite this resistance, in the course of the offensive of the Syrian army and the militia detachments against the ISIS positions, they have retaken control of over 105 kilometers of the Syrian-Jordan border. 9 frontier outposts have been installed. 22 towns have been signed reconciliation agreements that means the successful termination of reconciliation process with the Druze and the Bedouin tribes. The actions of the government troops aimed at recovering control over the Syrian-Jordan and Syrian-Iraq borders are continued. It is to be highlighted that the Russian servicemen, jointly with the Syrian government troops, are taking every effort for recovering peace on the Syrian land, avoiding unnecessary violence and saving people's lives. Along with that, any terrorist attempt to disturb the peacemaking process will be severely suppressed. The counter-terrorist operation on the territory of Syrian Arab Republic will be continued until the completed elimination of ISIS on the territory. Thank you.